Arber Xhekaj, and I'm pronouncing this. It looks, I can't even. Anyway, you helped me with that before we jumped on here. But he really caught your eye throughout the entire Hamilton Bulldogs playoff run. So, what do fans have to look forward to in Arber Xhekaj? Because I've heard people on my channel saying that not enough people are talking about this kid.
Oh, he's definitely looks like he's going to be the real deal. The Hamilton Bulldogs actually got him from the Kitchener Rangers at the trade deadline, and that was a big move for them. They gave up a lot of top-end prospects, a lot of top-end draft picks, draft capital to go and get Arber Xhekaj from the Kitchener Rangers as an overage player. He has experience with Jay McKee, who is the head coach of Hamilton now, was the former head coach in Kitchener. So they did have that relationship already, and Jay knew what Arber could bring to the team when they went in and acquired him. So he was just a polarizing figure throughout the playoffs. Again, he's one of those guys where he is the hockey cliche, hard to play against. This guy is the model of that. He's got a high motor. He's highly competitive. And at points during the playoffs, even his head coach, Jay McKee, had told us in the postgame that sometimes he has to kind of reel him back a little bit because Arber just gets so intense out there that he goes and tries to, hit anything that moves and gets himself into some bad situations where, he hits a guy in a bad spot, guy gets a penalty, and just kind of has to settle him down because he's so intense and he's got that high motor to always go out there and want to do everything possible and get into the scrums and things like that. But again, you don't want to do that every single shift and get your team into penalty trouble. He got a penalty in the Eastern Conference final, in the OHL final, where he was actually projected to be suspended for a hit that he had made at the end of the third period. Windsor ended up getting a 5-minute power play out of that and winning the game in overtime. So he actually was not suspended for that play, which a lot of people thought he was or should have been. Came back the next game and had a big game. So Arber Xhekaj, I think, is one of those players where he could transition well into an NHL defenseman because he plays the game hard. He knows what he has to do. He's always competitive out there, and he really stepped it up when Nathan Staios, who's been their top defenseman for most of the year, went out, and their captain Colton Cameron was out. So Arber Xhekaj really had to step up in their absences until Staios came back later in the last series. But just really solid play from Arber Xhekaj. And in the championship series, he had 7 points in the 7 games, 24 penalty minutes. So again, he does take some penalties, but does take some risks. But I think the coaching staff likes his intensity and what he can bring to the ice as long as he knows the boundaries and doesn't cross that line more times than not, because that's the way that he has to play to be successful.
Okay, well, I'm curious to see what Luke Richardson could do with him on the defensive coaching side for the Canadiens eventually. But we should mention some information about him. And just while I have Xhekaj's information up here, a left shot defenseman, 6'4", 204 pounds, currently listed. And we got another guy coming in, Caden Gooley, who's got a similar stature, maybe different playing style, but. Is there anything else you can tell us about his game? I mean, we looked at his numbers. So in 18 games played in the playoffs specifically, Brandon, 6 goals, 10 assists, good for 16 points in 18 games. And then this season with the Hamilton Bulldogs, 33 games played, 6 goals, 11 assists, so 17 points in those 33 games. Pretty consistent numbers throughout his career in the OHL with Kitchener and then going into Hamilton. So offensively, though, if he focuses on that side of his game, what could fans maybe look forward to there?
Yeah, I mean, he was playing the top power play when Nathan Staios was out of the lineup, but mostly getting second line power play time. One of my colleagues, Colin Ward, had said at one point, "Why don't they put him in front of the net? He's a big body. He'll stand there. He'll take the beating, and he'll create space for his teammates in front of the net," but they never decided to do that. It was interesting. Jay McKee, his head coach, at one point had said that even in practice he tries to mess with him, where he tries to go up and give him a body check, and Jay bounces off him as a not a small guy and a man who played in the NHL is getting bounced off by Arber Xhekaj. He's a very, even though he's a young player, he's already looking like he's got the size to play in the NHL, and he's got that hard-nosed, gritty mentality where he's going to go out there and do whatever he needs to do to help the team win. Again, you'd like to see a little bit more from his offensive game, but just the way that Hamilton kind of structured their power play and things like that, he wasn't getting the top power play time that maybe he would if guys like Nathan Staios were out of the lineup. But I think there is some offensive ability to his game, and again, every shift he goes out there, you're getting a high intensity, high motor type player. And when the head coach says he has to kind of pull him back a little bit, you know that that type of player transitions well to the NHL game, because, you know, they're always looking for those guys that are those hard-nosed players that are going to give you consistency night in and night out. And in an 82-game season grind, you want guys like that that are going to show up every night and give it all. And again, you'd want to keep the penalties down a little bit. But I do think that he's going to be a very solid player defensively, and we'll see what kind of rounds out in his offensive game, because I do think there's still something to be desired there that he might be able to develop in the pro hockey game. For Xhekaj, I think he could turn out to be maybe a fourth defenseman, maybe a 3-4 defenseman if he develops properly. Maybe the lower end of that, maybe a 5-6. But I do think that Montreal signed him as an undrafted player, right? So
yeah,
whatever they get out of him is basically going to be playing with house money at that point, because he was not drafted. But I think he's really earned his spot. And one of the guys in the OHL that has been the most polarizing this year was Arber Xhekaj. You had the players in Windsor, or you had the fans in Windsor booing him every time he touched the puck. This is a guy that you hate to play against, but you'd love to have on your team, because he's going to do everything possible to make the opponent's life, you know, not easy. And he's going to do everything possible to stand up for his teammates, because at any moment there's a scrum out there. And if number 8 was on the ice, you knew that he was going to go out there and try to stick up for his players and have 4 guys in the coaching staff trying to pull him back onto the bench, because that's the type of player and the kind of character that he is. He's always a team first guy.
Well, that's good to note as well. Now, so it sounds like the hype train is a little higher on Xhekaj right now than necessarily Mishak, who you also saw on this same team with the Bulldogs on their way to the OHL title.